Thank you for coming, everyone. There's some amazing places that are showing up. We saw Iran and Portugal, and where else did we see? Seattle, exotic Seattle. We saw South Africa. We saw Alaska. I've always wanted to go to Alaska. There's a bunch of book clubs here. The SU book club, the Y guys and Y gals book club. I love all the book clubs because, as you know, the whole reason we did this was that we can do things together. So it's nice that everybody's forming a book club. I'll just wait another second or two to let some more people come over from YouTube to Instagram. Give them a second or two to log on and all that good stuff. I'll say that last week was so inspiring and fun. I had such a good time. As you can see, I shaved and I put a shirt on. The good news is I still remember how to do buttons because it's been a while. So that's good. And the reason we did this book club is because it's been 10 years since Start With Why came out, and I wanted to do a 10-year anniversary edition and go update it and sort of make some edits, things that I would have said differently. And I figured, well, if I have to read it, it might be fun to invite people to come read it with me, which is why we started book club. And now that we're all sort of under lockdown for Corona, I figured why not use this as an opportunity for people to do something together, to form book clubs, whether it's in their family at home, among their family at home, or with friends virtually, to read a section every week and discuss it as a book club, and then come on here and we can discuss it together. So that was the whole purpose of this. Is that we could do something together. So thank you to everyone who've participated. Thank you to everyone for all your questions. I thought what I would do is this one was a chock-a-block full section. This is where I first introduce the concept of the golden circle, explain the biology of it, and talk about sort of how the mechanics of the golden circle work. Although what I might do to kick off today's book club was just share a little bit about how I came up with book club, how I came up with the concept of the golden circle. So I have my career started in marketing. And I was always fascinated why some marketing, some advertising worked and some didn't. I worked at a big agency where I could take the same clever team and they would make stuff that worked and stuff that didn't. So it wasn't the team. And sometimes it was the same with the client. But there was always marketing out there. And when I grew up, when I was coming of age in my career, Apple was such a dominant force and their marketing was incredible. And why is it that their work was so good? Because their agency produced bad work as well. So it wasn't just the agency. And so I would look at all of the marketing and advertising that I admired, and I noticed that there was actually a pattern, that they always started with what they believed at the top and the product stuff came at the bottom. The bad advertising was the opposite. So I actually wrote down this pattern pretty early on, and I used to use it to explain how marketing worked. I was as an event, and you sit around a table and you get seated next to strangers, and the person I was sitting next to, a woman by the name of Victoria Hopper, her dad, I think it was her dad, was a neuroscientist. And, we were talking and she started telling me about the limbic brain and the neocortex. And the more I started to learn, the more interested I became. I started doing some basic research about the neocortex and the limbic brain when I got home and realized this little pattern that I had written down to explain marketing wasn't just marketing, it was us. It was why we do what we do. It explained the behavior of people. That I tripped over this. And then when I went through this dark period in my own life, which I've talked about many times when I explain this, I had this little idea on the shelf that I went to and realized that it was a salvation for me because I knew what I did and I knew how I did it, but I didn't know why. So when I realized the biology behind this, I realized this was more than just a nice idea and a nice theory. It was actually grounded in the tenets of biology, and not only did it help me, but it helped explain so much of what was going on. And as I explained in the section, I called it the golden circle, because I was inspired by the golden ratio, this magical ratio that sort of seems to explain so many things and shows up in so many places. And I figured that if this thing shows up in so many places, I should call it golden as well. So that's where the whole thing actually came from. So I tell you one of the fun things about reading this book, some of it I smile at how relevant it still is today, so relevant, about how we're being communicated at in these Corona times. and even how we communicate to each other and how we're learning to reinvent ourselves. Even we're trying to reinvent our own organization as we're going through these weird times. And it's kind of wonderful. I'm sort of getting reference. I'm actually learning about stuff that I'd forgotten about. That's really helpful. I cringe at some of it because some of it's a little dated, and some of the references I make, like to PDAs, your personal digital assistant, we don't even use those anymore because we all have smartphones. So I recognize as a group of people who are reading the book who don't even know what I'm talking about. But still, it's been a lot of fun for me. Okay, let's do your questions because that's the whole point of this and that's the fun. Okay. Let's have a question. Let's take a look here. I have a question from Wayne. Wayne asks, how do you know if your why is something you can lead others with? That's a great question. Well, Wayne, if you've ever made a friend, then your why has relevance in the lives of other people. At the end of the day, whys are compatible with each other. And so our why is the thing it's the thing we give to the world. It's the service we offer. It's the value we have in our friends' lives. Or if you're a company, it's the value you have in your customers' lives. And if they find value in that thing, they will want to be around you. They feel a tribal connection. And so the good news is, if you're a human being, your why will have relevance to others. And if you have a vision of a world that you want to build, others will follow you to help build that. So your why will always have relevance to some other people, not all other people. And if you invite them to come build something and you talk about your why, I talked about that actually in this section, which is you simply knowing it and trusting your gut is no value to anybody else. The value of articulating your why and being able to communicate your why is the thing that makes you able to lead with your why. Good question, Wayne. Okay,
Here's
let's.
a good one from Fiona at the Brighton World Book Club.
Fiona at the Brighton World Book Club, yes.
What if you are not in a position of authority in your organization, but you clearly see a why for the company? What do you do?
If you're not in a position of authority for the organization, but you see a why for the organization, what do you do? Well, that's a tricky one. Very often there's, in organizations, all organizations that sort of make anything of themselves probably started with a why. The leaders may not have properly articulated it, and it may have been organic in the personalities of the leaders. And usually those organizations, they tend to be weak in the sense that even if they're very successful, if the leader leaves, then things start to get weird and go sideways because it was held by the leader, not necessarily acculturated into the company. And sometimes we can see things that the leader can't see. If it's a good leader, and they're open-minded, then you go to them and ask, can I help? We can go through a process to articulate the why. One of the things that I found, even amongst extremely successful leaders and entrepreneurs, is they have this false belief that because it's clear to them, that it's clear to everybody, but it's not. And so it requires a good relationship to be able to go up to them and say, hey, listen, I know you think it's clear for everybody, but it's not. So let us take you through the process to uncover your why so we know the why for our own organization. So if you have a good leader who's open-minded to that, they'll go through the process. And I've done that with multiple leaders where they still, even going through the process, didn't think they needed to do this, but their team asked them to do it and they did it willingly for the good of their team. If there's a leader who says, no, we're crystal clear on what it is, then the best thing you can do is just be the leader you wish you had. You can lead for the people around you. We cannot control that which we cannot control. So hopefully you have a good relationship with that leader. They have got a nice question here from Edmund. This is a good one. I like this one. I'll get to Edmund's in a second. So, I lost it. Here it is. From Oscar Luna, 84. Oscar Luna. Oh, Oscar Luna. Oh, there we go. It's all one word. Are we changing the way we try to fit or belong to a certain group in this COVID-19 era? That's such a good question. Nothing really changes the way in which we try and fit. What I really like about this COVID thing is that the silly things that we used to use to connect us to other people, superficial things, seem to have gone by the wayside. This is one of the great things about hardship and crisis, is a lot of the superficial stuff falls to the wayside because we're all going through the same thing. There's a shared suffering. And so people who we may not have had a connection with before, we now actually have connections with. I'm in California and everybody's waving to each other when we're going out for a walk or when somebody drives past. It's kind of weird. Like nobody used to wave to anybody ever. Again, there's a shared camaraderie. And even now, think about how we're so connected around the world. It doesn't matter if our nations are historically friends or allies or not. We feel very connected to each other. We have much more of a connection, much more of a related story. Before, our related stories were so different. And now we're reminded that we're human and we're all susceptible to the whims of Mother Nature. So I think crisis and COVID-19 has actually been good for us as a people. The question is, will it last once this is all over? I really hope so. We have to work hard at that. Okay, back to Edmund's question. Edmund asked, since the publishing of this book in 2009, lots has changed in the tech industry, especially for Apple. You use Apple in your book as an example of a company that understands their why. Do you feel that it is still the case today, or have they lost their why? That's such a good question. It takes a long time for a large corporation to go completely abandon their why, but if we're honest, there are definitely cracks in the armor. Apple used to be an organization that ignored Wall Street and never paid dividends, for example, and now it does pay dividends, and the company seems to be more preoccupied than it used to be with the short-term financial standing and the stock price. That's relatively new. Even in the terms of innovation, Apple seems to be playing catch-up with a lot of companies, a lot of products, and that Apple wasn't always the first to come out with something, but it would sometimes do something better. I hate to say this, the HomePod is not a great product. The speaker is amazing. If you just use it as a speaker, it's unbelievable. But as a competitor to Google Home or to Alexa, it sucks. I've never said that about an Apple product in the past. It's pretty, but it sucks. It's not the same as it used to be, and we can make certain guesses based on how we experience the product and experience their advertising and experience their stuff. I don't think it's completely abandoned their cause, not at all. I still think there's idealism there. I still think Apple stands for the individual. Their stance on privacy, for example, is very much power to the individual, just like they always believed in power to the individual. The question is, are they obsessed with their cause as they used to be, and are they still talking about power to the individual in the halls of Apple? I don't know. Okay, Olivia.
Chris Cavan said, what advice, in the spirit of starting with why, would you give to a young college students who are graduating this year and trying to launch themselves into a particularly uncertain future?
Okay, Chris Cavan asked, if you're graduating college, how do you use your why when you launch yourself into this new world, especially into a very uncertain future? Well, here's the good news, Chris. The future is always uncertain. We just are reminded of it right now. This is one of the downsides of good times, which is we falsely believe that there'll always be good, and we don't prepare for disasters like this one. So the future is always uncertain. I think that there's great opportunity to be had in times like this. It's a time for great reinvention. I actually think I talked about this in the chapter. Good question, Chris. References the section we just read. In one of the sections we read, I talked about how the organizations that define themselves by what they do, and I think I used Dell as an example, really struggle to reinvent themselves. And I think I used the airline example as well. Simply copying how other people do things or how other organizations do things simply to appear that you are doing something different doesn't really work. And the organizations that not only have the ability to go and do different things, but to reinvent themselves, really have a fundamental understanding of their why. Same is true for human beings, same is true for individuals. The clearer the understanding of our why, the more opportunity you will find out there. So let's take me, for example, right? So most of my living I make standing on stages, giving public speeches. That's kind of a lot of what I do. Well, that dried up super quick. So if I was defining myself by what I do as an author and a speaker, then I would freak out. I would start writing more books, which I couldn't write that quickly. And I would be looking for ways simply to give speeches online. But that's not reinvention. That's not taking advantage of the situation to bring my why to life. So that's what we've done as an organization. We've gone back to my why, to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. So together, each of us can change our world for the better. And we're looking for new and creative ways to do that. You're going to start seeing some of it coming out live in the next week or so. We're going to be offering all kinds of new classes and webinars and things, some hosted by me, some not hosted by me, because we're finding new ways to bring the cause to life. So going back to your question, Chris, as a college graduate, don't worry about what you're going to do. Worry about why you're setting out into the journey in the first place. And remember, your first job is not going to be your last job, and your first job doesn't have to be your best job. It's the journey. It's about refining and learning what you're good at, learning where your skills lie. And the question is where should you start your journey, and appreciate each step of the journey. But it's an amazing opportunity for a young person now, believe it or not, because you have an opportunity to completely reinvent how you show up in the world rather than follow the set paths that were set for us in conventional times. Here's one. I'm going to take a live one. Let's take a live one. Oh my God, there's so much love. Thank you, everyone. Hello from Morocco. I went to Marrakesh. I love it there. Went to Marrakesh twice, actually. Best orange juice I ever had in my life. Okay, so Janina from Valiant's Future asks, thank you for starting this book club. Great idea. Thank you, Janina. We enjoyed the first episode a lot, especially the questions read by your daughter, my niece. Our company, we have a great why, taking care of a better climate, yet it is not even known throughout the organization, 13,000 people. How do you manage to anchor it to larger organizations? Taking care of a better climate. Let me push you there a little bit. The why probably doesn't have to do with the climate. The manner in which you're bringing the why to life has to do with the climate. A why almost always has to do with human beings. And if climate weren't a challenge in our lives right now, your why would be the same. You'd be bringing it to life in a new way. But that's not the question you're asking. The question is asking is, how do you bring it to life in a large organization? Well, just like bringing it to life to the public, you have to talk about it. The leaders have to start meetings with it. You have to put it on your website. The leaders have to give speeches to the team about it. You need to give awards that recognize people who advance the cause. You need to build it into the incentive structure. You need to talk about it obsessively to the point where people make fun of you and say, we know, right? What you find is great leaders, they're constantly talking about the same themes over and over and over again. Go to the companies we love. Go to Sweetgreen. They talk about sustainability and health and local farming obsessively. And it's written in the walls of their office. I'm a great fan of taking advantage of the walls in your office. Walk through the hallways. Look in stairwells. Usually they're empty. Put big words. Remind people. I visited a dance company in London called Rambert. And their why is all about push yourself. And we walked through the stairwell because sometimes the elevator takes too long, so we took the stairs. And guess what? The stairwell was barren, bare, nothing in there. What a missed opportunity. Not anymore. Now on one floor in huge letters it says push. On the next level it says yourself in big, big letters. It reminds everybody who walks up and down the stairs. So in an office you can paint it. You can put it everywhere. If you visit Southwest Airlines headquarters in Dallas, they have a company store. The company store is actually in the cafeteria. It's in the company cafeteria. What's the company store called? It's called the Freedom Shop. In other words, right there in the cafeteria, it reminds everybody why they come to work. Freedom. So take advantage of the office walls and make sure you communicate it loudly and often. Okay. How somebody, I lost it. Here we go. This is Kagla. Sorry, it keeps popping up. How can we clearly understand our why? There are many ways to find your why. Actually, in about a week, in the next few days to a week, we will actually be doing a little program called Jumpstart Your Why, where we're going to take a group of people through a 90-minute to 120-minute exercise where you can come and jumpstart your why. So stay tuned for that. We'll announce that. That's one way to do it. I'll share another way with you. I have a little thing called the Friends exercise, which you can do to get yourself in the ballpark. Find a friend you love and who loves you. Do not do this with a family member. Do not do this with a spouse. That relationship is too close. Find a friend, the friend who you could call at 3 o'clock in the morning and you know they would take the call, or that they could call you and you would always take the call no matter what. Friends you love. And ask them this question. Why are we friends? They're going to look at you like you're crazy. What do you mean, why are we friends? Now, ironically, finding your why, you don't actually ask the question why, because it's an emotional question and it elicits emotional answers. Have you ever had it when you're at work and somebody says, why did you do it that way? Sort of you take offense, like they're challenging you, even if that's not how they meant it. So as soon as your friend asks, what are you talking about? Why are you asking me this? You actually then start asking what? Come on, you say to your friend, what is it about me that I know that you would be there for me no matter what? And they'll hem and they'll ha and they'll struggle to answer the question, as we read in the last section. Not because they don't know why they love you, it's because the part of the brain that controls the feeling of love doesn't control language. The limbic brain doesn't control language. They will struggle to put into words why they love you, why you're their friend. So they'll start rationalizing. It's just what we read in this last chapter. They'll start rationalizing. I don't know, you're funny, you're loyal, you've always been there for me. You have to play devil's advocate. Don't help them. Don't let anybody else help them, but you play devil's advocate. You say, well, that's the definition of a friend. You could say that about anybody. What specifically, magical word specifically, what specifically is it about me that I know that you would be there for me no matter what? They'll hem and they'll ha, they'll get frustrated. You'll keep playing devil's advocate. You'll keep saying things like, well, that's just the definition of a best friend. And eventually they'll give up. And eventually they'll start describing themselves. And what my friend said to me is, I don't know, Simon. All I know is I can just sit in the room with you. I don't even have to talk to you and I feel inspired. And I got goosebumps. In fact, I'm getting them right now. In other words, what they finally articulate is the value you have in their lives by talking about yourself. And you will have some sort of an emotional reaction. You'll get goosebumps or you'll well up. Something will happen. You'll emotionally respond to limbic brain. You'll emotionally respond to the words they say, because the things we give to the world is the value our friends have for us. So if you were to do this with multiple friends you love, you will get exactly the same answer, if not very, very close, because the value we have is our why. So that's a fun way to find your why. It won't give you the exact words, but it'll put you in the ballpark. It's kind of fun.
Here's one that's kind of adds to that. Goldie Sember.
Just have a drinking problem. Goldie Sember.
Do you think a personal why is the same as a business why?
Goldie asks, is a personal why the same as a business why? Yes. A why is basically an origin story. It's where we come from. So for an individual, it's the sum total of how we were raised, the lessons we learned from our parents, from our friends, from the experiences we had growing up. Our why is fully formed probably by our mid to late teens. We are who we are, and it never changes for the rest of our lives. A company, if there's a founder or a small group of founders, the company takes the why of their founder. Virgin is Richard Branson. They share a why. He built the company in his image. Just because it got big doesn't mean it changes. The goal is to keep it clear so it can stay clear as it gets big. For too many organizations, when they start having success, they forget about the why and they become obsessed with the what. They become obsessed with the results and actually forget about the origin story. But yes, it's basically the same process, because what is a company? Just a group of people. That's all it is. It's a corporate structure, but fundamentally it's a group of people who come together. It's a tribe. And so how we define the why of a tribe, it's a person or a small group of people who says, I'm starting my own tribe, and it's based on some sort of values and vision. Well, guess what? It's the exact same thing. Now, can you break it in a company? Of course you can. But can we forget it as individuals? Absolutely. We can be out of balance. We can suffer stress and depression sometimes when we forget our why. Our friends will say to us, it's like, I don't know who you are anymore. So both are the same process to find them, and both have to work very, very hard to maintain them, which is why I often interchangeably talk about individuals or organizations. It's the same thing. It's just the difference of scale. Should we do one more?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. One more live question. Yeah, go ahead.
Another from Warren from England. Who inspires you and why?
Oh, Warren from England wants to know who inspires me and why. Thank you, Warren. That's a good question. There are many people who inspire me who you've never heard of them. I have some very dear friends, some of them I wrote about in my books that I've become friends with and they've become mentors. I wrote about a General Laurie Robinson in Start With Why. We haven't got to that chapter yet, but we'll get there. Amazing human being. I've known her since I wrote this book, and she's become a dear friend and mentor. Totally inspires me. Lieutenant General George Flynn from the Marine Corps. I met him in the course of writing Leaders Eat Last. He's become a dear friend and mentor. Johnny Bravo, who I wrote about in Leaders Eat Last, dear friend and mentor. Bob Chapman. These people inspire me beyond. So very often the people that I write about have inspired me because I wrote about them. And I have a lot of dear friends and who do that for me. Okay, let me take one from, should I take one from the...
I was going to read one, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take one from Marcus.
Yep.
Marcus, Michelle, and the rest of the Read to Lead members group of leaders from Walt Disney World. Hi, Walt Disney World. I hope you're still doing Disney-like things from home, singing and performing and all that good stuff. In the 10 years since Start With Why came out, have you seen any companies or public figures embrace the idea of starting with why in the golden circle and really change the way that they operated and made an impact in the world? Any leader or company you would consider referencing in the anniversary edition of Start With Why? Thanks again. Hope you're staying safe and healthy. Thank you. Same to you. Yes, a lot of younger companies have really embraced it. I mentioned Sweet Green before, Airbnb, Cliff Bar. Those are companies that I have learned over the years, I didn't know this, that had found my work and used this as the basis to help them understand their own companies, which is so inspiring for me to discover those things. The cool ones are when people actually make changes in their organizations. Bob Chapman, the way I met Bob Chapman, who I wrote about extensively in Leaders Eat Last, the founder, not the founder, but the CEO of Barry Waymiller. He saw my TED Talk about Start With Why and basically came to me and said, I built this company based on this idea. He realized he was doing it simultaneously by accident, and I put words to what he had done. And we met and became friends. But that's such a great question, to reach out to the people who did actually make profound changes based on the work and thank them and use them as an example. That's a great idea.
Here's a great one. Stephanie Wilson.
Simon,
what is your message to all the paramedics, EMT doctors, and nurses right now? Their why is clear and evident, but how do they keep going?
Yeah, to all the paramedics and doctors and medical professionals on the front line, their why is clear. It's why they keep going to work every day, and we are immensely grateful. What would I say to them? Take care of each other. I mean, it seems self-evident, but a lot of forget. I've seen some of I've seen some messages that have been coming from frontline medical professionals, and some of it has been really gut-wrenching. The stress and the tempo. I mean, if you're an ER doc or an ER nurse, for example, you're used to gore and blood and guts and tragedy, but not at this constant tempo. I read an article this morning that a paramedic in New York City, they're responding to 1,500 calls a day or something crazy because regular medical stuff is happening as well. So one of the things I did is I actually reached out to some friends in the military, some combat medics, combat docs, and I asked them for advice. So we're actually going to go live on Monday. And so if you are a medic, if you are a doctor or a nurse, please submit your questions. And I'm going to ask these combat medics live on Monday for some advice. But most important thing is mental health. Managing energy and being tough, as I've learned from these combat medics, is not the right thing to do. Like putting on a brave face every day, like you have to have emotions. And it's really healthy to go not by yourself, but go with someone and have a cry, have a vent, have a scream, have a yell, get that stress out. It's really important to manage the energy and manage the stress along the way, because if we compartmentalize it, they taught me, if we only do is compartmentalize, when everything goes back to normal, that's all going to come flooding out. So we'll talk more about it with people who've actually gone through something close to this experience on Monday. Such a hard question, such a good question. And again, thank you. Thank you to all of you who keep volunteering to go to the front line every morning. Adam Brown from Alabama asks, How would you explain the golden circle communication technique to young officers that are trying to communicate the why, and how that connects to what their airmen, sailors, soldiers, and Marines are doing, and does that differs from private companies? So in the military, this is a military question, obviously. Very often, our armed services sometimes actually forget their own why also. They define themselves by their sphere of operation, right? The Air Force has historically said, we fly planes, and the Navy says, well, we drive ships, and the Army says, well, we're infantry, and the Marine says, we're infantry. But they all have some kind of boat, and they all have some kind of plane, and they have all some kind of ground troops. In other words, they actually kind of do what everybody else does, at different scales, obviously. What defines the uniformed services is their cultures. An airman, a soldier, a Marine, and a sailor are different people who have joined different tribes, and somebody who's struggling in the Army may actually succeed in the Air Force, or somebody who's thriving in the Navy may actually struggle in the Marine Corps, because they're different cultures. And I think the Marines do the best job of defining themselves by their culture. It's very, very people-focused, and depending on the leaders in each of those forces, but that's really the opportunity, is to define the value based on the culture. For example, the Air Force is not just a bunch of folks who fly planes, it's a group of people who are trying to find a better way of doing things. If every Marine is a rifleman, every airman is an innovator. It's a cultural thing. I can talk about that for a long time. So we'll go on to the next question.
Here's one from
oh, yes.
Lyron Stoll. Hi from South Africa.
Hello from South Africa, Lyron. Yes.
How do you know your why is going fuzzy, and how can one keep from losing their why?
How do you know if your why is going fuzzy, and how do you keep your why clear at all times? So think of a why kind of like being healthy, right? Like, how do you know when you're unhealthy? Sometimes you have to be a little unhealthy for a while before you start to feel or recognize it. It's kind of the same with your why. When you abandon it or forget about it, sometimes it takes a few steps before you start to see it. Stress usually goes up. Difficult decisions sometimes get more difficult. Joy of work goes away, goes down. And sometimes even relationships will struggle. We talked a while ago, sometimes people say, it's like I don't know who you are anymore. Those are clear signs that the why has gone a little fuzzy. So the question is, how do you get it back? Well, there's many, many ways. One, it's kind of like a 12-step program. Number one, you have to admit you have a problem. Number one, you have to admit, I think it's gone a little fuzzy, and you have to take accountability and responsibility for that. You have to go back to your roots, go back to what your why is, where you know that you come from and who you are. Take accountability. Go to those people and say, I've been off my game, my why has gone fuzzy, I'm really sorry, I'm working at it, and ask for help. None of us is strong enough to do this stuff by ourselves. Now, how do we guard against it going fuzzy? I surround myself with symbols as often as I can to remind me of my why. I'm human, I forget it. I become sometimes stuck in the weeds. I become distracted by the details sometimes, and I forget the bigger picture. We all do. And so the color orange for me is something I chose to remind me of my why. It's optimistic. You'll see the color orange on my website. You'll see it on stuff we sell. You'll see it on PDFs. I have orange belts. I have an orange on my watch. You'll see I love orange, and it's a reminder to me. But I don't do it for the outside world. It's for me. Also, pictures of people who remind you of your why. So Martin Luther King was on my desktop of my computer for many, many years as a reminder of my why. I have quotes that I printed out with a label maker and stuck them all over the place to remind me of my why. And on my computer, I stick little labels that says, remember why you do what you do, or inspire someone. I write the word inspire someone everywhere. So sometimes we have to take accountability, surround ourselves. It's like the answer I gave a moment ago about an office. Take advantage of all the blank space to remind yourself. And pay attention if you're unhealthy, if things have gone out of balance. Hi, Sarah Sparkles. Good to see you. Okay, let's do another question.
That's an interesting one.
Yes.
From Manoj. How do you move forward as an introvert if your why demands you to be an extrovert?
Okay, the question was, how do you move forward if you're an introvert when your why demands that you're an extrovert? Okay, a why would never demand that you be an extrovert. Your job may demand that you be an extrovert. What you do may demand that you be an extrovert. But your why, nothing to do with it. Your why is a belief set. It's where your values emanate from, right? It's how you view the world. It's how you approach the world. I'm an introvert. My job requires that I find energy to be a little more extroverted. If I had my choice, I would always be behind the scenes. I am much happier and in my happy zone behind the scenes. Like this whole stay-at-home order for COVID, it's like I've been preparing my whole life for this. It's like staying at home is just fine. And so for people who are naturally introverts, and let's be clear on what we mean by introvert and extrovert. I like Susan Cain's definition, the author of the book Quiet. It's not about how big your personality is or about how friendly you are. It's not about how socially awkward you are. I know socially awkward extroverts and I know very social introverts. It's nothing to do with it. It's about energy. That introverts wake up in the morning with 5 coins, and every social interaction they have, they spend a coin, and by the end of the day, they feel depleted. Extroverts wake up in the morning with no coins, and every social interaction they have, they get a coin, and by the end, they feel rich. Like my extrovert friends, like when we go to a party, at the end of the party, they want to keep going out because they have all this energy from the party. Me, I want to leave early and go home because I'm exhausted being social. Doing this right now, all this energy that I'm going to be exhausted in about 10 or 15 minutes because I have to call upon this energy. Now, how do I call upon this energy? I go to my why. I love doing this. It's a joy for me to share what I believe with other people who believe what I believe. We are the army. We're the ones building this world together, a world in which the vast majority wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe no matter where they are, and feel fulfilled at the end of the day. That is the world we're building. So for me, this is an honor and a joy to do. For me, it's worth spending the energy, worth spending those coins. I love that question. Okay, let's do another one.
Here's one from Al Baris. How do you separate why from ego?
How do you separate why from ego? Ooh, that's a good question. So a why is knowing where you come from, and ego is I guess your self-opinion, right? And I think ego in itself is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's a nothing. It's just a thing. I think when we talk about the difference between healthy ego and unhealthy ego, a healthy ego is thinking that you're good. An unhealthy ego is thinking that you're better than others. So I know some remarkable people with huge egos. I mean, they think they're good, they know they're smart. But if you come up to them and say, hey, I have an idea, they lean in and say, let's hear it. They're open-minded to the ideas of others. They don't think they have every answer. They understand that one person can't have all the answers. So I think healthy ego is knowing you're good. Unhealthy ego is thinking you're better than others. What do we have here? Here's Andrew Beach from the Party of 5 book club. Hi, Party of 5 book club. I'm assuming because there's 5 of you. What are the best ways for taking an organizational why and making it accessible to staff? So one of this is kind of what we touched upon in this last section in the book, which I like, which is you can have a sense of your why. It can be in your gut. And to make it accessible to your staff, you have to find words that connect with people. It's Martin Luther King wasn't the first person who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. He wasn't the only great orator of the day, but he found words to put into language what so many of us felt that we went, that's what I've been trying to say. And usually that's the art and skill of great communication, is finding the words that capture the feelings that other people also have. I think this is the reason that my work has spread. I hear this all the time from people. You put into words, they tell me, you put into words something I've been trying to say for years. And I think that's what you have to do in your organization. You have to put into words how other people feel about coming to work. Why do they love coming to work? Well, that's the job of putting it into why. And again, there's a process to go through that, which is reasonably efficient. Let's take a look. Nadine asks, Can there be an overdoing of the why, like a cult status or something? Does it then come rather manipulative rather than inspiring? So that all depends how the leaders, what are the leaders in service to their people or the leaders in service to themselves? Cult-like, you can accuse any strong organization with any strong culture of being cult-like. The Marine Corps is cult-like. Apple Computers, for many years, cult-like. The organizations with a clear sense of shared values can become cult-like. Now, if it actually becomes a cult, it's because the leader thinks that puts themselves first. The leader is putting their interests first and is using everybody else to benefit their needs and goals. In truly great leaders see themselves in service to the people, and the why can extend beyond them for years to come. So they sometimes may look the same, but they're definitely not the same. It depends on the motivation of the leaders and how they choose to manipulate people with that set of beliefs to get what they want for themselves. Here's one. These are such good questions. Nahala Jaff asked, what is the relationship between intuition and our why? So the why exists deep in that limbic brain, that part of the brain that controls our feelings and our behavior, but not language. And so when we talk about gut decisions or following your heart, you're not actually following your heart. Your heart's a muscle that just pumps blood. It doesn't direct behavior ever, unless it hurts and you die and you have heartbreak. These are emotional things we talk about. Oh, it breaks my heart. No, it doesn't. It just hurts emotionally. Intuition is the same thing. Having intuition is having a sense of something, and when you know your why, I think it enhances intuition. Because what the why is the root of the intuition. And so when I go, for example, when I know my why and it's front and center and I keep it front and center, the question was asked some time ago, what if you forget it? I sometimes do forget it when I go into meetings, and sometimes my intuition misguides me because I start focusing on the things they're telling me. I take bad advice. And trusting my gut, trusting my intuition is when I remind myself why I do what I do, and this is more important than anything else. And if I take a different path, I do so knowingly, and I know the costs of doing so. So intuition is one of those things. And I think the more we practice starting with why, the more we practice leading with why, the more we practice making decisions with why, the stronger our intuition becomes. Good question.
We have time for a couple more.
We started a little late, so if you're free this Saturday, we'll go a little longer if you like.
Livia Mikado and Neil Tumber.
Livia Mikado and Neil Tumber, yes.
How do you help everyone in your organization to find their why?
How do you help everyone in your organization to find their why? As we said before, there's a process. I've tried to help people find their why as many ways as I can. I told you about the friends exercise. Everybody can do that. It's super easy. I wrote a book called Find Your Why because for 8 years, people complained that I wrote Start With Why and didn't write how to find your why in that book. So we wrote Find Your Why. And remember, when I wrote Start With Why, this whole concept of why wasn't the thing. So it would have been too complicated. I realized when I was writing, it would have been too much in one book. So 8 years later, after Start With Why, I wrote Find Your Why. So you can go through the workbook. That workbook has both individual why discovery process and group why discovery process. And as I told you, because we can't go into companies and help them find their why anymore, we can't help people in person find their why anymore. We're doing the Jumpstart Your Why workshop, which we'll announce in a few days or a week at the most. But we've tried over the years to produce many, many ways. I invite you to go to our website, simonsinek.com. There's some free downloads that you can check out there. The Friends exercise is a free download, free PDF. Go check it out. And by the way, when we do this Jumpstart Your Why, it's going to be a pay-as-you-can model, so you can pay whatever you like. So we want to try and make this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible.
A lot of questions coming in around how does an imposter syndrome impact defining your why?
Oh, I love that. The question was, how does imposter syndrome factor into defining your why? So the clearer the why is, I think that you're less susceptible to imposter syndrome, quite frankly. because imposter syndrome, I don't think has anything to do with your why. Imposter syndrome is sort of wondering whether you have any role to play here. I mean, it's very often that I'll find myself in meetings or meeting people where I'm saying things and I'm like, why are they taking advice from me? Like, what the heck do I know? But I still believe in the stuff that I'm saying. I just am surprised every time that other people are interested. Is that imposter syndrome? I don't know. But I think one of the things that I discovered when my why became clear is that it gives you this sort of calm confidence. Like, it's not the kind of confidence that's bombast and beating your chest, but it's a quiet calm. So sometimes in situations where it's not going well, I shrug my shoulders and say, okay, this didn't work. I'll try it next time. So the whole imposter syndrome thing, I think you're less susceptible to it if you're in the practice of starting with why and using your why as often as possible. One of the things that I do is I remind people when I come into meetings, I don't have the answer. I don't think I'm right. I offer a perspective. And so because I set the expectation, I don't feel like an imposter with things that I'm saying because I don't think I'm right. I think I'm offering a perspective. So I think I hedge against the imposter syndrome because I'm not presenting myself as some sort of expert, but rather just a student on a journey. Thank you for all the nice comments. Thank you, Martha and Marcus, and drones. Should we do a couple more questions?
Sure.
Do I have any more here?
Here's one from Jules Golden.
Jules Golden, yes.
Jules from the YLD Things.
The
book club.
YLD Things book club. I don't know what that means, but I like the sound of it. The YLD book things.
How do you deal with a leader whose why is the right one, but their how is not good for their employees?
So the why, that's a good question. How do you deal with a leader where their why is good and focused, but their hows are not good for the employees? Okay, so remember, the magic of the golden circle is that no one piece is more important than any other. I don't think the why is more important than how or what. It's just the piece that's most often neglected or forgotten, which is why I talk about it, because everybody knows what. We know we have to do things and make stuff and have a job and have skills. And some people know that you have to distinguish yourself from everybody else. Those things are not new. It's the why that gets so often forgotten. But if any one of those pieces is missing, you are out of balance. So the fact that the why is strong in this organization or in this leader, but the hows, they don't follow a set of clear values, then they're out of balance. The golden circle is out of balance, and that's where they have to work. By the way, you can have a super strong why and super strong hows, but if you don't produce anything that helps bring it to life, and all you're doing is, doing whatever job you can find and not paying attention to finding a tribe or finding a company where you feel like you belong, then your why can be crystal clear, your values can be crystal clear, and you're going to be struggling and feel stress because you're in a place doing something that isn't where you should be. So believe it or not, they're not off the hook. Each piece of the golden circle must be in balance for that calm confidence, for that focus, for that joy, for that fulfillment, for that inspiration. Each piece has to be there. No one piece is more important than the other. Here, I like this one. What's more important for you, why or vision? Thank you, that disappeared. I lost it. It went away. What's more important, why or vision? They're equally as important. They're different things. So why comes from the past. Remember, it's an origin story. It's where we come from. And to discover your why, you look backwards in your life. We look for patterns across our life when things were naturally going extremely well. We look for patterns. We can identify that pattern. That is our why. It's the thing that we give to the world. It comes from the past. It is the foundation of who we are. Vision is where we're going. It's about the future. It's about imagination. It's not based on something objective. Vision is entirely subjective. Your why is objective. You have one. It never changes for your whole life. Your vision is subjective. You can pick any vision you want. It's the world you're trying to build. Preferably, it's good to stick to one vision. Tweak it every now and then because otherwise you're all over the place. But you can have you can only have one why, and everybody has one. You can have multiple visions. You can have one for your family, one for your company. You can have one for your community. You can have multiple visions. You can apply them differently. So I like to talk about vision as a just cause. mainly because there's no standard definition of vision. And so many organizations and individuals say, my vision is to be a millionaire. My vision is to, that's not a vision, that's just a goal. That's why I call it a just cause. So for me, vision is about just cause, a cause so just that we would willingly sacrifice in order to help advance this cause. So think of it like a house. A why is the foundation of the house. Once you build a foundation, it's there, it's solid, it's what gives the organization or our lives structure, but you don't change the foundation. That's it. Now, you can have a vision of the house you want to build, of the life you want to lead, of the company you want to build, and you build on the foundation. So there's basic structure that's going to remain the same, but you can change the shutters, you can add floors, you can expand, you can redecorate. So vision is where the house is going. Why is where the house is coming from, where it's built upon. We'll do one or two more, and then I'll let you go about your day. And for some of you, go back to bed. Yeah. Thank you very much for staying up. I feel so bad for the folks who were on YouTube. I'm looking at some of the comments. Somebody wrote, is it still over? Did I get the time zone wrong? Oh, I feel so bad. We will post this. I will save this and post this. We'll post this on YouTube for anyone who missed it. If you have friends who wanted to be here and couldn't, please let them know. We will put it up. And if, believe it or not, I have YouTube in the background, it's still telling me that it's going live an hour later. So something's wrong there. Anyway, we figured it out. So thank you everyone for being patient and meeting me here.
Introvert from Germany. Hi from Germany.
Hello from Germany, yes.
How to deal if my why is not matching the why of my colleagues?
So if my why doesn't match the why of my colleagues, then one of two things is happening there. Assuming that everybody is clear on their why and operating in balance with their why, that means you probably don't get along. So for example, if your why doesn't match the why of your friends, you probably actually don't enjoy spending time with those friends, and the question is, why are they your friends? We don't have the same choice with our colleagues. Now, if it's en masse, I like to joke, like the only thing in common with all my failed relationships is me. Like, if they all get along, but you're the one that doesn't get along, then I would offer that it's one of two things. Either you don't belong in that company, or on that team. Sometimes you belong in the company, but not that team. Divisions have divisions of companies. Teams have subcultures, and so sometimes you belong in the company, but in a different part of the company. That could be part of it. Or maybe if it's, I'm not going to guess that it's toxic, but if it's toxic, it could be just that group of people. But if your whys are different, you're going to struggle to get along because your values are going to be so polar opposite. And so what I would do is find a place where you can find common values. We started this conversation about the magic of Corona, magic of COVID-19 is across the entire planet. We're all having a shared experience. And we all can relate to each other on an entirely new way. In other words, we're all human beings subjected to the whims of Mother Nature. And so if you truly aren't getting along with people, find common ground. For example, I have friends who have totally different political views than me, totally different. And yet I'm so proud of those friendships because we can look past politics, we can make fun of each other for our politics, we can have debates about our politics and discussions about our politics. We get frustrated with each other because of our politics, but we love each other because we care about each other. And fundamentally, the relationship is based on who we are as human beings. And we view each other as fundamentally good people who care about us and want each other to make that we feel safe. So find that common human ground as best as you can. And I bet you can find a way to get along with your colleagues. So we'll do one last one.
I think this
one
is
last one. We'll call it a day. Yeah.
Brown gritty women. How can we best prepare ourselves?
Brown gritty women.
Yes.
Brown gritty women book club. Yes.
How can we best prepare ourselves and others for the new normal without knowing what it is?
How can we best prepare ourselves for the new normal without knowing what it is? Well, let's. You're 100% right. Now, one of the things is this is what we're experiencing. Is normal in the sense that change is a constant in our world. Like the way we live our lives now is totally different than the way we lived it 20 years ago. Like even just 10 years ago, reading some of these, the way I speak, the language I choose in Start With Why, is I'm like, oh, I'd never say those things now. The world is constantly changing. It just is so clear now because it's so sudden. That's what makes it feel that much more traumatic. But remember, there's new technology, there's cultural change that's constantly happening. The world order is constantly changing, but those changes tend to be slow, so we can adapt slowly. And if we don't adapt, we can sort of like get dragged along. Like when the internet showed up, some companies grabbed onto that technology, invented new technologies based on the internet, new companies, new ways of seeing the world, and some companies and some industries just dragged along, like television and publishing. And some of them have made up for ground, some lost ground, and some haven't. And so the question is not how do we prepare for new normal, because we're trying to predict the future there. The question is given the current circumstances right now, how can I bring to life what I believe in a new way? We know that in-person is something that's going to be delayed for a while, right? So the question is how do we take advantage of this new world where we are physically distant? How can we create new ways of creating social closeness while physically distant? I mean, I talk about it all the time, the importance of human relationships, the importance of social closeness. And again, look at what this book club is. This isn't just me talking about start with why, blah, 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 let's have a book club. It's a foil, it's a mechanism. The book club is just a mechanism for us to come together. But most importantly is for you and your friends to come together to form the book club. It's more important that you form book clubs and that you're hanging out with your friends on a regular, scheduled, weekly basis to talk about something other than COVID, to talk about something other than the news. But it's really about togetherness. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to find new ways to advance my cause given the real circumstances. So don't worry about what the future holds. We don't know. Adapt for now, and I promise you, whatever new normal is, which we cannot predict, you'll be way better equipped to manage and survive and thrive in that world. So, on that, I want to say thank you so much to everyone for coming. Just a reminder, we're going to be back on Friday's schedule. So happy Easter, happy Passover, happy National Sibling Day to everyone for this weekend, which is why we did it on Saturday. But we're going to be back to our normal Friday schedule. So we'll be doing part three of Start With Why, which is leaders' need of following. That should produce some good questions. We're going to get really into the thick of leadership next week. Friday, April 17th, back at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Friday, April 17th, 3 p.m. Reminder, if your book club has questions, please send them to bookclub@simonsinek.com. And we will also be taking live questions, of course. Please tell us the name of your book club. It's really fun for us to find out. Again, bookclub@simonsinek.com if your book club has questions that we can get them in advance. If you want to re-watch anything that we've done here or any of the previous book club sessions, we will put them up on YouTube, and hopefully YouTube Live will work next week. We'll try again next week. Thank you again for all your patience. Thank you for joining. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Love you all, and see you all next week.